C'est quoi ça, mec?
How come you guys do not have air conditioning everywhere?
Because we can just open the windows. And also comfort is over-comforted. America is obsessed with comfort. Everything has to be comfortable. Yes. No, life is hard and sometimes you need to suffer. We just open our windows. It's called Stoßlüften, where you open all windows at the same time, even when it's cold, when it's like negative 15 degrees, and you still open the windows and then the cold air can just come in and penetrate the room, and then it eradicates all the state air. It leaves nothing but pure! Yeah, Americans are bad at handling comfort.
That's why we have so many pillows. In
and
Germany,
pills.
Pills and pillows.
Pills. Oh, have a little oopsie whoopsie, have a ouchie fouchie. Take Tylenol, take this. In Germany, we take a walk. We just notch it off.
Why can't they have AC? You're literally killing your old people. Make it stop. Get AC. I lost a lot of awe for Europe in the past few weeks. They went through a heat wave where thousands of people died a day. In fact, it's commonly said now more people died from their heat waves than our gun violence. The reason I lost my awe is that Europeans always talked about how we sacrifice for the common good, how the common person is taken care of, how the average person lives a better life than the average American. Sure, maybe it's better to be rich in America, but it's better to be a normal person in Europe. This is what they always told us, but it turned out to be false, and the evidence is that you're boiling alive in your apartment. AC has nothing to do with environment. It has nothing to do with anything like that. It has nothing to do with equity. Your governments are just coping because they cannot provide you a basic standard of living. And it's not just about young people. I've lived without AC and heat waves. I've lived in Iran where the AC is not as good and the electrical grid is overwhelmed and it shuts off. But the difference is your elderly people are dying. You have ICUs, surgery rooms where it reaches 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I know Fahrenheit, sorry Celsius, it's probably like 50 Celsius, whatever, sorry, 45. There you go, happy? That is unacceptable. You can't have a country, you can't have a society, you can't have a future going forward where people are dying of heat exhaustion in the ICU. I'm sorry. And yes, global warming is a problem, but most of the exhaust, most of the emissions come from places like India and China. It's not your fault, Europe. Many of your countries have clean power. France is nuclear, for God's sake.
Now, I might get some heat for this, no pun intended, but I didn't know that most of Europe didn't have AC. Because they don't have AC, but Europe is also like a lot of walking. Like, that's what you do there. And that's fine, but when I walk a lot, I get tired. And then if I get tired, I want to sleep well. How am I going to sleep if my room isn't at least 62 degrees Fahrenheit and you have no AC? And luckily for us in the US, it's also hitting us. The heat dome, yeah. And I live on the east side. See the side that's like dark red? And not only is it going to be hot outside, but I can't be the only woman who runs super hot when I sleep. So it already makes it harder to have a good night's sleep when you're constantly tossing and turning and taking the covers off, because like, you have to have the covers on. There could be monsters. You can't sleep with no covers. The more that I look into this, the girls that are handling this fine have an 8 sleep pod. It cools just your side of the bed down, so whoever's sleeping next to you could do their own thing. And it has a hot flash mode that cools you the second that you overheat. Their research even found that women had 56% fewer nighttime hot flashes. So I don't know, I might get one and try it out for 30 nights before this heat takes me out. At least I'll be a well-rested woman.
I cannot believe it. The media and governments from France and Germany now openly discourage European people from using air conditioning because they claim it makes global warming. As a climate action practitioner, I will tell you, this is very wrong. And here are some very concrete and undeniable reasons. First, as a basic ethical rule, nothing can justify people's suffering. We have millions of children, older people, who face critical heating threat, and AC is somewhat the most straightforward solution to mitigate the harm. Whatever the side effects can be, people's welfare is always the top priority. The media and government have to offer any alternative to cope with the heat, but demanding people to bear the suffer completely lacks the basic human empathy, which should be condemned. Second, the climate researchers indeed concluded that air conditioning can emit heat back into the air and potentially contribute to global warming. But that conclusion has been massively misinterpreted and misquoted. The scientists only point out that AC is not a perfect solution, but in the past decades are there better solutions to adapt to extreme heat? Are nowhere to be seen. if looking at the real science behind it, whether AC harms climate is largely related to how green our energy is. Therefore, AC is not accountable for climate change, but coal power plants are. Likewise, ordinary European people who want basic living comfort are not accountable for climate warming, but those very mistaken regulations, incompetent environment policymakers, anti-human welfare propaganda media are supposed to take all the blame. Ask me 1,000 times. My answer will stay the same.
So France is blaming America for the record heat wave happening across Europe that has unalived over 1,300 people, specifically blaming America's air conditioning. Paris's deputy mayor, Audrey Pulvar, who blamed America, said, "Dear American journalists and social media influencers, for days some of you have been criticizing and making fun of Paris because the city does not have AC in every room. OMG, this is so rich. As the second largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in the world, you bear a significant amount of responsibility for global warming and the consequences we in France are experiencing. Your cities, which are 90% air conditioned, are not unrelated to this. So please, enough with the lecture, just start doing your part." And Americans saw this and went on X to hit back at France. Like Diga and CPA, they really think this is what's happening. Super Trucker, if you say so. Kira, the F we do. Katie, you guys could just get air conditioning. It is available. Dustin, the European mind cannot comprehend this. Absolute Resolve, good one, showing that China is #1 in CO2 emissions and not the US. And Demobyte showing a meme that regardless of anything, they will just always blame the US. Please follow for more news, and do you believe the US is to blame?
That the European countries are already facing the record of heat wave. Now, my question is it time to embrace air conditioning? So, as Europeans experience another intense summer, one topic has moved to the center of public debate, like the air conditioning. So, for decades, many Europeans have relied on the thick stone buildings, shaded streets, open windows, and less the traditional methods to stay cool. But with temperatures climbing higher and even heat waves are lasting longer, many people are beginning to ask whether those approaches are still enough in this continent. So I want you guys to watch the rest of the video from here. Then I'll come back here and give out my commentary about these situations that are being faced in UK.
More Europeans die every year from heat-related illness than Americans do from gun violence.
Not only is it true, I looked it up. The excuse that the buildings are so old and they don't want to mess them up by putting in AC sounds ridiculous because lives are at risk. Just like when Europeans say lives are at risk, so it's ridiculous that America can't pass pew-pew control laws. I actually love old architecture, I wouldn't want to mess it up. But I didn't realize the number of European fatalities due to heat-related illness is so dramatically high.
You need to turn off your air conditioning and remove it from your house. Those of you using air conditioning in the UK are the reason for the climate emergency.
Hi, I'm a dumb American from across the pond, and I couldn't help but notice that not only are you sweating, you're also virtue signaling without any clear solutions. I want to make a couple quick points about why this is wrong, ineffective, and how you're offloading the problems of the elite ruling class onto the working class so we can be pitted against each other in a burning hell. Firstly, people using their AC during a heat wave is not going to make the climate crisis any better. So you might as well keep your AC on and keep yourself cool. Number two, I think it's publicly good to have air conditioning because it is a health crisis to have a bunch of people who are too hot. Number three, this problem doesn't exist because people have been using air conditioning. The high carbon footprint of air conditioning is not solely because of an air conditioning unit, it's because of how it's powered. So maybe you shouldn't blame other people for using their devices when our governments could have been doing a better job of using not fossil fuels to power the economy. Finally, this is my favorite point, by the way, if you're looking for someone to blame, blame the fossil fuel industry and everyone who enabled their massive disinformation campaign and legislation that hinder the development of renewable resources and its implementation. I wrote a paper about 15 years ago about the stark contrast between the consensus on climate change and its causes compared to the media landscape at the time in the late 2000s and early 2010s. So what you're doing is, one, ignoring the actual culprit of why it's so damn hot. Two, not offering any tangible solutions or remedies for people right now. And third, you are making this a working class war that is going to be a huge issue, I'm sure, in the upcoming elections and for the foreseeable future. Because if I had caused a massive global climate crisis, I would be much happier and feel much safer if people were fighting amongst themselves as opposed to looking at me. So whether it's air conditioning or refugees from famine and climate-stricken areas, politicians in the fossil fuel industry will avoid accountability and working-class remedies as long as we are fighting amongst ourselves.
In university, our Korean roommate thought he was going to be unalived because we left the air conditioning on. A lot of Koreans still believe that leaving the air conditioning on or using a fan causes asphyxiation or hypothermia. And so even today, a lot of Koreans, even in the US, are very cautious about using air conditioning or using fans, especially at nighttime. And it really reminds me of how some Europeans, feel about air conditioning. And a lot of people think the Korean government is responsible for spreading this rumor because in the 1970s, they were really trying to conserve power. And so this story just started showing up that you can't leave your electricity or you can't leave your fan or air conditioning on overnight. And then when people would have sort of a taboo, like unaliving in the family, like someone would have an alcohol-related death, they would just say, oh yeah, it was fan death, because that's like at least socially more excusable.
Europe is weak, it's a continent in decline, and it no longer has any more relevance on the global stage. This is what right-wing parties across Europe want us to believe. To an extent, they are correct. And it's not due to immigrants and migrants taking over. It's actually due to their racism. And we can see it right now with this heat wave that is happening on the continent that is killing innocent people. Europe is currently experiencing a surge in right-wing parties due to propaganda that is largely paid off by billionaires and millionaires abroad and on the continent. Climate scientists, of course, have predicted this, and it is expected to get a lot worse in the future. Why? Well, because Europe is the fastest warming continent. It is heating at twice the global average. France just hit its hottest day ever since they started record keeping. It is hotter in some places in Europe than in Saudi Arabia right now. And of course, none of these far-right parties actually believe in the existence of climate change. I looked it up. The AfD party in Germany opposes renewable energy. They want to reverse emission reduction targets. They even reject the idea that climate change is man-made. And they find climate protection measures to be pointless. And they are no more different than other right-wing parties and figures who seek to profit off of the destruction of our environment. And surprise, it all has the United States' blessing. Donald Trump's administration mapped out how they intend to prop up right-wing figures in Europe as a way for the United States to remain the greatest and most successful nation in human history. This is why when Viktor Orban was running for re-election, J.D. Vance was in Budapest, continuing to spout the same boring right-wing propaganda that Hungarians did not fall for, but other European countries are. Talking about how migrants are committing crime. You can't even recognize certain European cities anymore, even though crime is on a downward trajectory across Europe. Even though crime peaked in the majority of European countries in the 90s. Spouting bullshit great replacement theory, something that has been proven time and time again to be false. But of course, it's easier to believe racist bullshit than use your brain to think for yourself. The fastest heating continent is experiencing a surge in right-wing propaganda in which their leaders do not believe in climate change. And that must be why leaders like Pedro Sanchez in Spain is one of the few in Europe with balls. Approximately 60% of Spain's energy comes from renewable sources. Spain doesn't have to be the US's bitch, unlike Germany, Italy, France, and the UK. These people are wondering why their continent is going under, when the answer is right in your fucking face.
I have an AC in Germany, but there's a problem. See, European homes aren't really built for ACs. The way an AC works is that there's a compressor. The compressor transfers heat from air and makes it cold, which comes inside, but the warm air that it produces needs to go outside, which is why there are kits like these, but they're not very efficient. If you look closely, the seal isn't perfect, the sound insulation is terrible, and a lot of insects come inside. But don't worry, I'm gonna fix it. This is terrible. Okay, so I fixed it, but I fear it's not the most beautiful solution, but it is the most efficient solution. So I went ahead and got some insulating foam boards from Bauhaus, and I sealed them using duct tape. And this is good because compared to the fabric solution, this does a much better job of keeping hot air outside and the room cool. Second, this keeps annoying insects from outside from coming in. And third, I wanted to keep this pipe, which gets hot, as short as possible because it counteracts the cooling effect from the AC. But aesthetics wise, I'm not convinced. Which one do you think look better? Let me know in the comments below.
It's not even that hot in Europe. It's hotter in Arizona or Texas. If you're saying this, go turn your air conditioning off. Leave it off. Sleep in it for days. Let's see how you feel. Do you want to turn your air conditioning on? Well, a lot of Europeans can't. For a multitude of reasons. We don't need to get into that, but the fact remains is that a lot of Europe, specifically France, I'm in Italy, not every house, I think 1 out of 5 houses has air conditioning. So when you're talking about, oh, it's not that hot, it's not that hot, without air conditioning, yes, it is. It is dangerously hot. And the same thing happened when people were bashing on people in Texas that were going through the snowpocalypse of 2021. Many parts of Texas that are not used to getting snow, the pipes are outside the house. So pipes were freezing. People were losing hot water, losing water, period. Pipes were bursting. In parts where they are prepared and they have the infrastructure to support such freezing temperatures, the pipes are underground or inside. So you guys, let's have some perspective that other places in the world are not equipped for extreme temperatures. If you want to make fun of Europeans for this heat wave, go turn off your air conditioning. Let's see how long you last, okay?
So one of the biggest differences between the Europe and let's say the United States is how homes are designed. You find that in America, central air conditioning is common in homes, offices, shopping centers, hotels, and even many public buildings. Many Americans barely think about it because it's simply part of everyday life. In much of Europe, however, air conditioning has traditionally been seen as unnecessary, too expensive, or even unhealthy by some people. So as a result, millions of homes still don't have any form of cooling. So this has created real challenges during the extreme heat, and the families are searching for portable air conditioners. Fans are selling out in stores, and hospitals often warn vulnerable people, including older adults, young children, and those with medical conditions, to stay cool and hydrated, right? So it is more than just uncomfortable. It can become a serious public health risk. So this conversation has also become cultural. Like some people argue that widespread air conditioning uses more electricity and also could contribute to environmental problems. So if the energy comes from fossil fuels, others believe that modern energy efficiency cooling systems are essential for protecting lives during increasingly frequent heat waves. So rather than viewing air conditioning as a luxury, they see it as a practical tool that should be combined with better insulations, improved building designs, renewable energy, and smarter urban planning, right? So there are also practical challenges unique to Europe. So like you find that many cities have historically built buildings that are difficult to retrofit with modern cooling systems. And also these apartments living is very common, and installing air condition may require approvals or let's say the structural changes that aren't always simple. So these factors make widespread adoption more complicated than it might appear. So perhaps The most interesting takeaway is that every region adapts to the climate it has historically experienced. Like the Americans built many homes expecting hot summers and therefore invested heavily in air conditions, right? And you find that the Europe nations often build for milder conditions, so making natural ventilation, also the thick walls, the primary defense against heat. So as the climate changes, both approaches may need to evolve, right? Ultimately, this isn't about proving one culture is right or they say are wrong. It is about recognizing that rising temperatures are creating new challenges that require practical solutions. Whether those solutions involve air conditioning, improved building standards, more green spaces, better urban planning, or combination of all these, the goal should be the same, like keeping people safe, healthy, and also comfortable. So, what do you think? Should air conditioning become a standard feature in Europe homes, or are there better long-term solutions to dealing with extreme heat? So, I want you to share your thoughts in the comments below, and yeah, I'll see you in the next episode.